Hi, I'm Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress, and it is my pleasure to wish you a very happy Children's Book Week. This year marks its 100th anniversary, and the Library of Congress is excited to join the celebration. We are especially excited about the 2019 theme, Read Now, Read Forever, because it looks to the past, present, and the future of children's books, and our celebration aims to do the same. Today, the Library of Congress is launching a new digital collection of children's book selections. This new collection is made up of full-color, digitized versions of dozens of specially selected children's books from our general and rare book collections. Our hope is that these books will be enjoyed equally by children, their parents, and teachers. We've organized the collection into three main categories: learning to read, reading to learn, and reading for fun. To help us connect young readers of today with these historic children's books, we've teamed up with the voices of contemporary creators of children's literature. Local authors who are members of the Children's Book Guild of Washington, D.C. will be reading 20 of these special books to you right here from the Young Readers Center in the Jefferson Building of the Library of Congress, starting right now and continuing for the next few hours. As you listen, do keep in mind that every one of these stories that we have selected existed when the first Children's Book Week was celebrated 100 years ago. So get comfortable and put your listening ears on. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Catherine Marsh. I am the author, most recently, of Nowhere Boy. And today I'm delighted to be reading Mother Goose in hieroglyphics, which is not quite as old as you'd think with hieroglyphics, since it was published in 1855. Mother Goose nursery rhymes have been enjoyed by children for centuries. One early claim to the author's actual identity had the rhymes starting with Dame Goose, printer Thomas Fleet's mother-in-law, who loved to sing songs and tell stories to children. Mr. Fleet supposedly gathered the rhymes together and printed them in 1719. But no copy of that work has been found, and that claim has been discounted with many others. Mother Goose remains a fictitious but no less beloved character today. This collection of 26 nursery rhymes was printed in 1855. It is a rebus, inviting the young reader to interpret the many pictures that replace nouns throughout the text. Mother Goose in hieroglyphics. It is often said that folks nowadays are a deal wiser than their fathers and grandfathers, but I don't think so. For who has ever written books like Mother Goose, Mother Hubbard, and Mother What's-Her-Name that lived a great while ago? And books for children, too, little dears. How many of them owe their lives to the influence of their soothing songs and lullabies? The world would not have been half-peopled had not these old sages once lived and written their invaluable books for children. When the doctor sends for psychic for a nervous little chick, make a mistake and go to the booksellers and buy Mother Goose and hieroglyphics. That's what is wanted, a pretty book written with pictures as they wrote in Egypt a long while ago, when folks knew something about the time when Mother Goose herself was a little gosling. Yes, buy one of these little books, and when it is torn up, buy another and another, till the wee ones are old enough to read Robinson Crusoe and the like. My word for it, there is nothing like books with pictures to keep children quiet. And this is the best that was ever written, as everybody knows. Mother Goose in hieroglyphics. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner, eating a Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, "Oh, what a great boy am I." Pussycat Pussycat, where have you been? I've been to London to see the Queen. Pussycat, Pussycat, what did you there? I frightened a little mouse hiding under her chair. Ride a horse to Charing Cross to see a lady jump on a white horse with rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she shall have music wherever she goes. Hush-a-bye, baby, upon the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down tumble cradle, baby and all. Hey, diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see the sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, hang the gate. 9, 10, a good fat hen. 11, 12, ring the bell. 13, 14, draw the curtain. 15, 16, go to meeting. 17, 18, to hear the preaching. 19, 20, that's a plenty. Little boy blue, come blow your horn. The sheep are in the meadows, the cows in the corn. Is this the way you mind your sheep? Under the haystack, fast asleep? Tom, Tom, the piper's son, stole a pig and away he run. The pig was eat, and Tom was beat, and Tom ran crying down the street. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread. She whipped them all soundly and put them to bed. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocketful of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. And wasn't this a dainty dish to set before the king? The king was in the parlor, counting out his money. The queen was in the kitchen, eating bread and honey. The maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. There along came a blackbird and nipped off her nose. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, Mary, have I, 3 bags full. 1 for my master, and 1 for my dame, and 1 for the little boy that lives in the lane. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and I wanted to say a brief word about Children's Book Week, which I feel so fortunate to celebrate here at the Young Readers Center of the Library of Congress. This year, the center is celebrating enduring children's books as well as new ones. And when I write books for children, I want to make sure that I'm writing for the children of today and also the children of tomorrow. And I think all children's book writers hope that their books will live on in the hearts of children and in the hearts of grown-ups who have children always inside them, their childhood selves. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Chandra Strickland. Today I'll be reading to you Kate Greenaway's A Apple Pie book. Kate Greenaway's ABC book teaches the alphabet as she tells the story of eating an apple pie. Her illustrations here of happy, well-fed, and scrubbed clean children are good examples of idealization of childhood. A Apple Pie by Kate Greenaway. A, apple pie. B, bit it. C, cut it. D, dealt it. E, eat it. F, fought for it. G, got it. H, had it. J, jumped for it. K, knelt for it. L, longed for it. M, mourned for it. N, nodded for it. O, opened it. P, peeped in it. Q, quartered it. R, ran for it. S, sang for it. T, took it. U, V, W, X, Y, and Z all had a large slice and went off to bed. The end. Now, if I were illustrating this book, we wouldn't have any fighting. There would also be a party at some point where everyone gets to share the pie. But I hope you enjoyed today's reading of Kate Greenaway's A Apple Pie. Once again, I'm Chandra Strickland. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Debbie Levy. I'm the author of 25 books for young people, including I Dissent, Ruth Bader Ginsburg Makes Her Mark, and my latest book, This Promise of Change, with co-author Joanne Boyce, cover art by the superb Echoa Holmes. Today I will be reading Humpty Dumpty by W.W. Denslow, published in 1903. W.W. Denslow, most famous for his illustrations of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, writes and illustrates this book about the son of Humpty Dumpty, who frets over his fragile state and wants to avoid his father's fate. He takes the advice of a wise hen, asks the farmer's wife for help, and turns his future into one of resilience and fearlessness. Without further ado, Denslow's Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty was a smooth, round little chap with a winning smile and a great golden heart in his broad breast. Only one thing troubled Humpty, and that was that he might fall and crack his thin white skin. He wished to be hard all the way through, for he felt his heart wobble when he walked or ran about, so off he went to the black hen for advice. This hen was kind and wise, so she was just the one for him to go to with his trouble. "Your father, old Humpty," said the hen, "was very foolish and would take warning from no one. You know what the poet said of him. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty together again." So you see, he came to a very bad end just because he was reckless and would not take a hint from anyone. He was much worse than a scrambled egg. The king, his horses, and his men did all they could for him, but his case was hopeless, said the hen, and shook her head sadly. "What you must do," continued the hen, as she wiped a tear from her bright blue eye, "is to go to the farmer's wife next door and tell her to put you in a pot of boiling hot water. Your skin is so hard and smooth, it will not hurt you, and when you come out, you may do as you wish. Nothing can break you. You can tumble about to your heart's content, and you will not break nor even dent yourself. So Humpty rolled in next door and told the farmer's wife that he wanted to be put in boiling hot water, as he was too brittle to be of any use to himself or to anyone else. "Indeed you shall," said the farmer's wife. "What is more, I shall wrap you up in a piece of spotted calico so that you will have a nice colored dress. You will come out looking as bright as an Easter egg." So she tied him up in a gay new rag and dropped him into the copper kettle of boiling water that was on the hearth. It was pretty hot for Humphrey at first, but he soon got used to it and was happy, for he felt himself getting harder every minute. He did not have to stay in the water long before he was quite well done, and as hard as a brick all the way through. So, untying the rag, he jumped out of the kettle as tough and as bright as any hard-boiled egg. The calico had marked him from head to foot with big, bright, red spots, and he was gaudy as a circus clown and as nimble and merry as one. The farmer's wife shook with laughter to see the pranks of the little fellow, for he frolicked and frisked about from table to chair and mantelpiece. He would fall from the shelf to the floor just to show how hard he was, and after thanking the good woman politely for the service she had done him, he walked out into the sunshine on the clothesline like a rope dancer to see the wide, wide world. Of the travels of Humpty Dumpty, much could be said. He went east, west, north, and south. He sailed the seas. He walked and rode on the land through all the countries of the earth, and all his life long he was happy and content. Sometimes as a clown in a circus, he would make fun for old and young. Again, as a wandering musician, he twanged the strings of his banjo and sung a merry song. And so on through all his travels, he would lighten the cares of others and make them forget their sorrows and fill every heart with joy. But wherever he went, in sunshine or rain, he never forgot to sing the praises of the wise black hen, nor the good, kind farmer's wife who had started him in life, hardened against sorrow, with a big heart in the right place for the cheer and comfort of others. I hope you liked this surprising and perhaps a little odd version of Humpty Dumpty. I did. You never know what you'll find in a book. I'm enjoying being here at the Library of Congress for Children's Book Week. The theme for this 100th anniversary is Read Now, Read Forever, which I love. Why do I love this theme? Because reading and books are things that we have for our entire lives, forever. We may change schools, we may change where we live, we may change our favorite foods, we may change our minds, but once we're reading, we've got that forever, and that doesn't ever have to change. Again, I'm Debbie Levy, and I hope you enjoyed Humpty Dumpty.
Long, and I'm going to read The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle by Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter had a lot of little animal friends that she liked to draw pictures of and write stories about, and one of them was her little pet hedgehog, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. My friend here is a hedgehog, right? And he's soft, but real hedgehogs are kind of prickly, so they can avoid being some bigger animal's lunch. In the story, there's a little girl named Lucy, and she's wearing a pinafore. She calls it her pinny. That was a kind of a little apron, sort of a smock thing that little girls wore over their dresses to keep them clean when they played. There's also a stile, and a stile is a set of steps on either side of a stone fence or wall so that it's easy to get from one side to the other. Let's read The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle, and we'll see the picture of the stile and the picture of Lucy and her pinny. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lucy who lived at a farm called Littletown. She was a good little girl, only she was always losing her pocket handkerchiefs. One day, little Lucy came into the farmyard crying. Oh, she did cry so. I've lost my pocket hankin. 3 hankins and a penny. Have you seen them, Tabby Kitten? The kitten went on washing her white paws, so Lucy asked a speckled hen, Sally Hennypenny, have you found 3 pocket hankins? But the speckled hen ran into the barn clucking, I go barefoot, barefoot, barefoot. And then Lucy asked Cock Robin, sitting on a twig. Cock Robin looked sideways at Lucy with his bright black eye, and he flew over a stile and away. Lucy climbed upon the stile and looked up the hill behind Littletown, a hill that goes up, up into the clouds as though it had no top. And a great way up the hillside, she thought she saw some white things spread on the ground. Lucy scrambled up the hill as fast as her stout legs would carry her. She ran along a steep pathway, up and up, until Littletown was right away down below. She could have dropped a pebble down the chimney. Presently, she came to a spring, bubbling out from the hillside. Someone had stood a tin can upon a stone to catch the water, but the water was already running over, for the can was no bigger than an egg cup. And where the sand upon the path was wet, there were footmarks of a very small person. Lucy ran on and on. The path ended under a big rock. The grass was short and green, and there were clothes props cut from bracken stems with lines of plaited rushes and a heap of tiny clothespins, but no pocket handkerchiefs. And there was something else, a door, straight into the hill, and inside it someone was singing. Lily white and clean, oh, with little frills between, oh, smooth and hot, red rusty spot, never here be seen, oh. Lucy knocked, once, twice, and interrupted the song. A little frightened voice called out, Who's that? Lucy opened the door, and what do you think there was inside the hill? A nice, clean kitchen with a flagged floor and wooden beams, just like any other farm kitchen, only the ceiling was so low that Lucy's head nearly touched it, and the pots and pans were small, and so was everything there. There was a nice, hot, singy smell, and at the table, with an iron in her hand, stood a very stout, short person staring anxiously at Lucy. Her print gown was tucked up, and she was wearing a large apron over a striped petticoat. Her little black nose went sniffle, sniffle, snuffle, and her eyes went twinkle, twinkle, and underneath her cap, where Lucy had yellow curls, that little person had prickles. Who are you? Said Lucy. Have you seen my pocket hankins? The little person made a bob curtsy. Oh yes, if you please 'em. My name is Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. Oh yes, if you please 'em. I'm an excellent clear starcher. And she took something out of the clothes basket and spread it on the ironing blanket. What's that thing? Said Lucy. That's not my pocket hankin. Oh no, if you please 'em. That's a little scarlet waistcoat belonging to Cock Robin. And she ironed it and folded it and put it on one side. Then she took something else off the clothes horse. That isn't my pinny, said Lucy. Oh no, if you please 'em. That's a damask tablecloth belonging to Jenny Wren. Look how it's stained with currant wine. It's very bad to wash, said Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle's nose went sniffle, sniffle, snuffle, and her eyes went twinkle, twinkle, and she fetched another hot iron from the fire. "There's one of my pocket hankins," cried Lucy, "and there's my penny." Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle ironed it and goffered it and shook out the frills. "Oh, that is lovely," said Lucy. "And what are those long yellow things with fingers like gloves?" "Oh, that's a pair of stockings belonging to Sally Hennypenny. Look how she's worn the heels out with scratching in the yard. She'll soon go barefoot," said Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. "Why, there's another hankersniff, but it isn't mine. It's red." "Oh, no, if you please'm. That one belongs to old Mrs. Rabbit, and it did so smell of onions. I've had to wash it separately. I can't get out the smell." "There's another one of mine," said Lucy. "What are those funny little white things?" "That's a pair of mittens belonging to Tabby Kitten. I only have to iron them. She washes them herself." "There's my last pocket hankin," said Lucy. "And what are you dipping into the basin of starch?" "They're little dicky shirt fronts belonging to Tom Titmouse. Most terrible particular. Now I finished my ironing, I'm going to air some clothes." "What are these dear soft fluffy things?" said Lucy. "Oh, those are woolly coats belonging to the little lambs of Skelgill." "Will their jackets take off?" asked Lucy. "Oh, yes, if you please'm. Look at the sheep mark on the shoulder. And here's one marked for Gatesgarth, and 3 that come from Littletown. They're always marked at washing," said Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. And she hung up all sorts and sizes of clothes, small brown coats of mice, and one velvety black moleskin waistcoat, and a red tailcoat with no tail belonging to Squirrel Nutkin, and a very much shrunk blue jacket belonging to Peter Rabbit, and a petticoat not marked that had gone lost in the washing, and at last the basket was empty. Then Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle made tea, a cup for herself and a cup for Lucy. They sat before the fire on a bench and looked sideways at one another. Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle's hand holding the teacup was very, very brown and very, very wrinkly with the soap suds. And all through her gown and her cap, there were hairpins sticking wrong end out, so that Lucy didn't like to sit too near her. When they had finished tea, they tied up the clothes in bundles, and Lucy's pocket handkerchiefs were folded up inside her clean pinny and fastened with a silver safety pin. And then they made up the fire with turf and came out and locked the door and hid the key under the door sill. Then away down the hill trotted Lucy and Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle and the bundles of clothes. All the way down the path, little animals came out of the fern to meet them. The very first that they met were Peter Rabbit and Benjamin Bunny. And she gave them their nice clean clothes, and all the little animals and birds were so very much obliged to dear Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. So that at the bottom of the hill, when they came to the stile, there was nothing left to carry except Lucy's one little bundle. Lucy scrambled up the stile with the bundle in her hand, and then she turned to say good night and to thank the washerwoman. But what a very odd thing. Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle had not waited either for thanks or for the washing bill. She was running up the hill, and where was her white frilled cap and her shawl and her gown and her petticoat? And how small she had grown, and how brown and covered with prickles. Why, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle was nothing but a hedgehog. Now some people say that little Lucy had been asleep upon the stile, but then how could she have found 3 clean pocket hankins and a penny pinned with a silver safety pin? And besides, I have seen the door into the back of the hill called Cat Bells. And besides, I am very well acquainted with dear Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. The end. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jean Deal, and I'm going to be reading The Pied Piper of Hamelin by Robert Browning. I guess we're going a little bit out of order. So The Pied Piper is our next book. Here, Kate Greenaway illustrates Robert Browning's telling of the tale of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. The legend of the Pied Piper, Pied describes the piper's multicolored clothing, dates back to the Middle Ages. The piper is hired to rid Hamelin of its rats, and when he is not paid for his labors, he leads off the town's children with the very same pipe. The Pied Piper of Hamelin by Robert Browning, illustrated by Kate Greenaway. The Pied Piper of Hamelin. Hamelin town's in Brunswick, by famous Hanover City. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side, a pleasanter spot you never spied. But when begins my ditty almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats. They fought the dogs and killed the cats and ate the cheeses out of the vat and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles, split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests inside men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, to the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor's a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking." An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "I wish I were a mile hence. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap at the chamber door but a gentle tap? "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" "Only a scraping of shoes on the mat. Anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat." "Come in," the mayor cried, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His queer long coat from heel to head was half of yellow and half of red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes, each like a pin. There was no guessing his kith and kin, and nobody could enough admire the tall man and his quaint attire. He advanced to the council table, and, "Please, your honors," said he, "I'm able by means of a secret charm to draw all creatures living beneath the sun that creep or swim or fly or run after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe to match with his coat of the self-same check. And at the scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers, they noticed, were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "And as for what your brain bewilders, if I can rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" "One, 50,000, was the exclamation of the astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Then, like a musical adept, to blow the pipe his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, you heard as if an army muttered, and the muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses the rats came tumbling, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plodders, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers. Families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed, dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished. You should have heard the Hamelin people ringing the bells till they rocked the steeple. "Go," cried the mayor, "and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats." When suddenly, up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, with a "First, if you please, my 1,000 guilders." 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue. So did the corporation, too. Quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you very well know, was in joke. Besides, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders. Come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside, and folks who put me in a passion may find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook being worse treated than a cook? You threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane. And ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet, soft notes, as yet musician's cunning never gave the enraptured air, there was a rustling that seemed like a bustling of merry crowds justling at pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, and little tongues chattering. And like fowls in a farmyard when barley is scattering, out came the children running, all the little boys and girls with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping, ran merrily after the wonderful music with shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if they were changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with the eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back. But how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat, as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. When lo, as they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed, and the piper advanced, and the children followed. And when all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Alas, alas for Hamelin. They wrote the story on a column, and on the great church window painted the same, to make the world acquainted how their children were stolen away, and there it stands to this very day. Well, thank you for listening to the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Like many old tales, this one includes some vocabulary and story elements that can be challenging for modern audiences, and it also contains some enduring themes. The theme of this year's Children's Book Week, Read Now, Read Forever, celebrates the past and the important future of children's literature, and the importance of making reading, being read to, or reading to others a part of your life now and in the future. As we celebrate the centennial of Children's Book Week, we celebrate that reach back through history and also forward to the present day to get books into the hands of every child, and for every child in our wonderfully diverse nation that is our nation's strength to be able to see themselves in a book. On the one hand, the old tale of the Pied Piper is about a time in a world that no longer exists, and the outcome in Robert Browning's telling, only one of many versions, is stark and harsh. This tale is also an example of the timeless universal ideas that can be found in stories from the past, and also in the present. Just to cite one, the idea that if a person goes back on a promise, they may unexpectedly hurt others whom they care about. Many themes of old and new books are shared. For instance, the theme of how a young teen finds resilience to cope with troubles at home, which is a subject I explored in Tiny Infinities. Thank you again for listening.
Hello, my name is Sadaha Akilbe. Sadaha Akil, or Sasa. And I am a co-author in a book called I Am the Night Sky and Other Reflections on Muslim American Youth, soon to be published by Shatmouse Press. Unfortunately, I don't have it here with me, but it will be coming out this June. So today I'm going to be reading Little Red Riding Hood from the Grimm's Animal Stories, published in 1909. Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm collected German folktales as a scholarly endeavor and first published them in 1812 for an adult audience. This collection of 13 tales translated into English for children was illustrated with the fanciful and engaging work of John Ray. Ray's depiction of Little Red Riding Hood's nemesis is particularly satisfying as she watches the wolf tumble into the trough. Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet maid named Little Riding Hood, much beloved by everybody, but most of all by her grandmother, who never knew how to make enough of her. Once, she sent her a little riding hood of red velvet, and as it was very becoming to her and she never wore anything else, people called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood. Here are some cakes and a flask of wine for you to take to your grandmother. She is weak and ill, and they will do her good. Make haste and start before it grows hot, and walk properly and nicely, and don't run, or you might fall and break the flask of wine, and there would be none left for your grandmother. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, instead of staring about you." "I will take care," said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand upon it. Now the grandmother lived far away in the wood, half an hour's walk from the village, and when Little Red Riding Hood had reached the wood, she met the wolf. But as she did not know what a bad sort of animal she was, she did not feel frightened. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," said he. "Thank you kindly, Wolf," answered she. "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's." "What are you carrying under your apron?" "Cakes and wine we baked yesterday, and my grandmother is very weak and ill, so they will do her good and strengthen her." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?" "A quarter of an hour's walk from here. Her house stands beneath the 3 oaks, and you may know it by the hazel bushes," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "That tender young thing would be a delicious morsel, and it would taste better than the old one. I must manage somehow to get both of them." Then he walked by Little Red Riding Hood a little while and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, just look at the pretty flowers that are growing all around you, and I don't think you are listening to the song of the birds. You are posting along as if you were going to school, and it is so delightful out here in the wood." Little Red Riding Hood glanced around her, and when she saw the sunbeams darting here and there through the trees, and lovely flowers everywhere, she thought to herself, "If I were to take a fresh nosegay to grandmother, she would be very pleased, and it is early in the day so that I shall reach her in plenty of time." And so she ran about in the wood looking for flowers. And as she picked one, she saw a still prettier one a little farther off, and so she went farther and farther into the wood. But the wolf went straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" cried the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," he answered, "and I have brought you some cake and wine. Please open the door." "Lift the latch," cried the grandmother. "I am too feeble to get up." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open, and he fell upon the grandmother and ate her up without saying one word. Then he drew on her clothes, put on her cap, lay down in her bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood was all this time running about among the flowers, and when she had gathered as many as she could hold, she remembered her grandmother, and set off to go to her. She was surprised to find the door standing open, and when she came inside, she felt very strange, and thought to herself, "Oh dear, how uncomfortable I feel, and I was so glad this morning to go to my grandmother." And when she said, "Good morning," there was no answer. Then she went up to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay the grandmother with her cap pulled over her eyes so that she looked very odd. "Oh, grandmother, what large ears you have!" "The better to hear with." "Oh, grandmother, what great eyes you have got!" "The better to see with." "Oh, grandmother, what large hands you have got!" "The better to take hold of you with." "But, grandmother, what a terrible large mouth you have got!" "The better to devour you." And no sooner had the wolf said it than he made one bound from the bed and swallowed up poor Little Red Riding Hood. Then the wolf, having satisfied his hunger, lay down again in the bed, went to sleep, and began to snore loudly. The huntsman heard him as he was passing by the house and thought, "How the old woman snores! I had better see if there is anything the matter with her." Then he went into the room and walked up to the bed, and saw the wolf lying there. "At last I find you, you old sinner," he said. "I have been looking for you a long time." And he made up his mind that the wolf had swallowed the grandmother whole, and that she might yet be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of shears and began to slit up the wolf's belly. When he made a few snips, Little Red Riding Hood appeared, and after a few more snips, she jumped out and cried, "Oh dear, how frightened I have been! It is so dark inside the wolf." And then out came the old grandmother, still living and breathing. But Little Red Riding Hood went and quickly fetched some large stones, with which she filled the wolf's belly, so that when he waked up and was going to rush away, the stones were so heavy that he sank down and fell dead. They were all three very pleased. The huntsman took off the wolf's skin and carried it home. The grandmother ate the cakes and drank the wine and held up her head again, and Little Red Riding Hood said to herself that she would never more stay about in the wood alone, but would mind what her mother had told her. It must also be related how a few days after, when Little Red Riding Hood was again taking cakes to her grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and wanted to tempt her to leave the path. But she was on her guard and went straight on her way and told her grandmother how that the wolf had met her and wished her a good day, but had looked so wicked about the eye that she thought if it had not been on the high road, he would have devoured her. "Come," said grandmother, "we will shut the door so that he may not get in." Soon after, the wolf came knocking at the door, calling out, "Open the door, grandmother. I am Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you cakes." But they remained still and did not open the door. After that, the wolf slunk by the house and got at last upon the roof to wait until Little Red Riding Hood should return home in the evening. Then he meant to spring down on her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother discovered his plot. Now there stood before the house a great stone trough, and the grandmother said to the child, "Little Red Riding Hood, I was boiling sausages yesterday, so take the bucket and carry away the water they were boiled in, and pour it in the trough." And Little Red Riding Hood did so, until the great trough was quite full. When the smell of sausages reached the nose of the wolf, he snuffed it up, and looked around, and stretched out his neck so far that he lost balance and began to slip. And he slipped down off the roof straight into the great trough and was drowned. Then Little Red Riding Hood went cheerfully home and came to no harm. The end. So the theme of this year's Children's Book Fest is Read Now, Read Forever, and I believe that is important because it encourages us to not only look to the past for context, but look to the future for new and bright ideas. And hopefully we can provide some of those for all readers, including me and yourselves, with books to come and books coming that have come. Thank you.
The slant book was first done in 1910 and is pretty amazing. It starts like this. Where Bobby lives, there is a hill so steep and high, 'twould fill the bill for Jack and Jill, their famous act to try. Once Bobby's go-kart broke away, and down this hill it kited. The careless nurse screamed in dismay, but Bobby was delighted. He clapped his hands in a manner rude and laughed with high elation, while close behind the nurse pursued in hopeless consternation. An officer slid off the lid as Bobby hove in sight and bellowed out, "You're scorching, kid. I'll run you in all right." But down the go-kart swiftly sped and smashed that cop completely. As he sailed o'er Bobby's head, Bob snipped a button neatly. A funny son of sunny Greece was standing near the curb. Beside his pushcart, wrapped in peace, that naught could well disturb. But all at once he got a shock. The go-kart speeding down collided with his fancy stock and littered up the town. The runaway then swerved a bit and snapped a hydrant short, which accident proved quite a hit of rather novel sort. The water spouted in a jet as much as 10 feet high, and all were soaked and nearly choked who chanced to be nearby. A farmer's wife, Miss Aggie Moore, was trudging up the grade. A basket full of eggs she bore to barter in the trade. The go-kart and the lady met, informally no doubt, and made a sort of omelette and spread it all about. A painter on a ladder perched was working at his calling. Against its foot the go-kart lurched and sent the fellow sprawling. His pot of paint tumbled down, all right side up it settled, about a chappie's flaxen crown. Oh my, but he was nettled. A German band across the street, its way was slowly wending, which was a moment indiscreet, the way that things were tending. The go-kart struck the bass drum square and passed completely through it. The drummer madly tore his hair and said, "Why did you do it?" Some working men were putting in a heavy glass plate front. The go-kart then came rushing in and did a little stunt. It smashed to bits its crystal pane, 2 sweating men were bearing, and sped on down the slanting plane and left them mad and swearing. An automobile, big and brown, was chugging up the hill and met the go-kart plunging down with speed that boded ill. At once there rose a noise and din of people in dismay. A sandwich man then butted in and opened up the way. A lad was rushing with a hat some lady had been buying. The go-kart caught and laid him flat and sent that hat back flying. The hat fell out and settled down upon our Bobby's head. "Say, I'm the swellest kid in town," that precious rascal said. A newsboy next was somehow hit. The go-kart, swift and dexterous, contrived to muss him up a bit and fill the air with extras. One copy Bobby neatly scooped and saw this wild display in type so bold it fairly whooped. A go-kart breaks away. Then, as the go-kart speeded by, a bulldog, quite pugnacious, seized on the handle on the fly and clung with grip tenacious. The go-kart's speed was so increased, the dog streamed out behind it, and Bobby turned to pet the beast, which didn't seem to mind it. Perambulating down the street was Miss Lucille O'Grady. The go-kart knocked her off her feet and took on board the lady. "Your fare," Bobby said with a shout, one chubby hand extending, but Miss O'Grady tumbled out with shrieks the heavens rending. A herder up the weary grade a yearling calf was leading. The creature was a stubborn jade. He lunged about unheeding. The go-kart caught between the rope, midway between the calf and herder, and both fell in behind the shay with cries of "Bah!" and "Murder!" Two chappies at the tennis met were battling fast and hard. The go-kart skidded off the street and shot across the yard. The game was 40 all, but then it didn't end that day. The go-kart dashed into the net and carried it away. On came the go-kart, down the grade. The town was now behind it, and ran into an orchard shade where Providence resigned it. But then it only grazed a tree and set it all a shiver. The ripened fruit fell merrily, and likewise Sammy Sliver. Then through a watermelon patch that awful cart descended, and split the melons by the batch. The farmer was offended, and tried to stop its wild career, which was a silly notion. It passed him promptly to the rear with quite a rapid motion. A picnic party on the green were seated at their lunch. The go-kart dashed upon the scene and through the happy brunch. Sardines and pickles, ham and cake were jumbled in a mess. Then straightway rose these picnickers and shouted for redress. An artist sketching on the slope, a lively air was humming, and so absorbed was he failed to note the go-kart was coming. A crash! The circumambulant air was filled with miscellany, and damaged quite beyond repair was Crimet's white Mulvaney. A damsel milked a brindled cow. Out in the pasture green, the birdies sang from bush and bough. All nature was serene. When suddenly a thunderbolt dispelled the sweet illusion. The go-kart gave the twain a jolt, and all was wild confusion. Upon a rustic bridge a chap cast out the bait inviting, and presently he took a nap and dreamed the fish were biting. Then came the go-kart like a gale, and rudely him awakened. At first he thought he'd caught a whale, but found he was mistaken. The longest night must have to end, as well as a beginning, and so this cart, you may depend, was bound to cease its spinning. It crashed into a hemlock stump that chanced to block its way, and Bobby made a flying jump and landed in the hay. As I said, I'm Katie Kelly, and I am mad for books. When I was a kid, we had some books hanging around that had belonged to my dad, and I saved my books for my children. And now my granddaughter, when she gets a little bit bigger, will be reading their books and mine and their great-grandfathers. So I think the key is, even when it doesn't make so much sense, like in this poem we just read, some of the words are really outdated and nothing we ever use anymore, but it's kind of interesting to find out what words meant at the time and what was popular and how they said things. We never say twas or twain't anymore. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy reading and look for things that are older than you.
Hello, my name is Susan Stockdale, and I'm the author and illustrator of picture books about nature for young children. Today I will be reading The Emperor's New Clothes from stories by Hans Andersen, by Hans Christian Andersen, published in 1911. Hans Christian Andersen's works are probably the most often retold stories in children's literature. In all, he wrote 156 tales and stories, 7 of which are included here, illustrated with 28 color plates by Edmond Dulac. The Emperor's New Clothes is one of his most delightful. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so excessively fond of new clothes that he spent all his money on them. He cared nothing about his soldiers, nor for the theater, his new clothes, nor for driving in the woods except for the sake of showing off his new clothes. He had a costume for every hour in the day, and instead of saying, as one does about any other king or emperor, he is in his council chamber, here one always said, the emperor is in his dressing room. Life was very gay in the great town where he lived. Hosts of strangers came in to visit every day, and among them, one day, 2 swindlers. They gave themselves out as weavers and said that they knew how to weave the most beautiful stuffs imaginable. Not only were the colors and patterns unusually fine, but the clothes that were made of the stuffs had the particular quality of becoming invisible to every person who was not fit for that office he held, or if he was impossibly dull. Those must be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. By wearing them, I should be able to discover which men in my kingdom are unfitted for their posts. I shall distinguish the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must order some of that stuff to be woven for me. He paid the 2 swindlers a lot of money in advance so that they might begin their work at once. They did put up 2 looms and pretended to weave, but they had nothing whatever upon their shuttles. At the outset, they asked for a quantity of the finest silk and the purest gold thread, all of which they put into their own bags, while they worked away at the empty looms far into the night. I should like to know how those weavers are getting on with the stuff, thought the emperor, but he felt a little queer when he reflected that anyone who was stupid or unfit for his post would not be able to see it. He certainly thought that he need have no fears for himself, but still he thought he would send somebody else first to see how I was getting on. Everybody in the town knew what wonderful power this stuff possessed, and everyone was anxious to see how stupid his neighbor was. I will send my faithful old minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He will be best able to see how the stuff looks, for he is a clever man, and no one fulfills his duties better than he does. So the good old minister went into the room where the 2 swindlers were working at the empty loom. Heaven preserve us, thought the old minister, opening his eyes very wide. Why, I can't see a thing. But he took care not to say so. Both the swindlers begged him to be good enough to step a little nearer and asked if he did not think it a good pattern and beautiful coloring. They pointed to the empty loom, and the poor minister stared as hard as he could, but he could not see anything, for of course there was nothing to see. Good heavens, thought he, is it possible that I am a fool? I had never thought so, and nobody must know it. Am I not fit for my post? It will never do to say that I cannot see the stuffs. "Well, sir, you don't say anything about the stuff," said the one who was pretending to weave. "Oh, it is beautiful, quite charming," said the old minister, looking through his spectacles. "This pattern and these colors, I will certainly tell the emperor that the stuff pleases me very much." "We are delighted to hear you say so," said the swindlers, and then they named all the colors and described the peculiar pattern. The old minister paid great attention to what they said, so as to be able to repeat it when he got home to the emperor. Then the swindlers went on to demand more money, more silk, and more gold to be able to proceed with the weaving, but they put it all into their own pockets. Not a single strand was ever put into the loom, but they went on as before, weaving at the empty loom. The emperor soon sent another faithful official to see how the stuff was getting on, and if it would soon be ready. The same thing happened to him as to the minister. He looked and looked, but as there was only an empty loom, he could see nothing at all. "Is not this a beautiful piece of stuff?" said both the swindlers, showing and explaining the beautiful pattern and colors which were not there to be seen. "I know I am not a fool," thought the man, "so it must be that I am unfit for my good post. It is very strange, though. However, one must not let it appear." So he praised the stuff he did not see and assured them of his delight in the beautiful colors and the originality of the design. "It is absolutely charming," he said to the emperor. Everybody in the town was talking about this splendid stuff. Now the emperor thought he would like to see it while it was still on the loom. So accompanied by a number of selected courtiers, among whom were the two faithful officials who had already seen the imaginary stuff, he went to visit the crafty impostors who were working away as hard as ever as they could at the empty loom. "It is magnificent," said both the honest officials. "Only see, your majesty, what design, what colors." And they pointed to the empty loom, for they thought no doubt the others could see the stuff. "What?" thought the emperor. "I see nothing at all. This is terrible. Am I a fool? Am I not fit to be emperor? Why, nothing worse could happen to me." "Oh, it is beautiful," said the emperor. "It has my highest approval." And he nodded his satisfaction as he gazed at the empty loom. Nothing would induce him to say that he could not see anything. The whole suite gazed and gazed, but saw nothing more than all the others. However, they all exclaimed with his majesty, "It is very beautiful," and they advised him to wear a suit made of this wonderful cloth on the occasion of a great procession which was just about to take place. "It is magnificent, gorgeous, excellent," went from mouth to mouth. They were all equally delighted with it. The emperor gave each of the rogues an order of knighthood to be worn in their buttonholes, and the title of gentlemen weavers. The swindlers sat up the whole night, before the day on which the procession was to take place, burning 16 candles, so that people might see how anxious they were to get the emperor's new clothes ready. They pretended to take the stuff off the loom. They cut it out in the air with a huge pair of scissors, and they stitched away with needles without any thread in them. At last they said, "Now the emperor's new clothes are ready." The emperor, with his grandest courtiers, went to them himself, and both the swindlers raised one arm in the air, as if they were holding something, and said, "See, these are the trousers. This is the coat. Here is the mantle," and so on. "It is as light as a spider's web. One might think one had nothing on, but that is the very beauty of it." "Yes," said all the courtiers, but they could not see anything, for there was nothing to see. "Will your imperial majesty be graciously pleased to take off your clothes," said the impostors, "so that we may put on the new ones along here before the great mirror?" The emperor took off all his clothes, and the impostors pretended to give him one article of dress after the other of the new ones, which they pretended to make. They pretended to fasten something around his waist and to tie on something. This was the train, and the emperor turned round and round in front of the mirror. "How well his majesty looks in the new clothes! How becoming they are!" cried all the people round. "What a design, and what colors! They are the most gorgeous robes." "The canopy is waiting outside, which is to be carried over your majesty in the procession," said the master of ceremonies. "Well, I am quite ready," said the emperor. "Don't the clothes fit well?" And then he turned round and round again in front of the mirror, so that he could seem to be looking at his grand things. The chamberlains who were to carry the trains stooped and pretended to lift it from the ground with both hands, and they walked along with their hands in the air. They dared not let it appear that they could not see anything. Then the emperor walked along in the procession under the gorgeous canopy, and everybody in the streets and at the windows exclaimed, "How beautiful the emperor's new clothes are! What a splendid train! And they fit to perfection!" Nobody would let it appear that he could see nothing, for then he would not be fit for his post, or else he was a fool. None of the emperor's clothes had been so successful before. "But he has got nothing on," said a little child. "Oh, listen to the innocent," said its father. And one person whispered to the other what the child had said. "He has nothing on. A child says he has nothing on." But he has nothing on, at last cried all the people. The emperor writhed, for he knew it was true, but he thought the procession must go on now, so he held himself stiffer than ever, and the chamberlains held up the invisible train.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Bennett. I'm a music educator, and I'm this year's teacher-in-residence at the Library of Congress. Today, I will be singing a few songs from our old nursery rhymes with original tunes harmonized by Alfred Moffat, published in 1911. 30 nursery rhymes are presented by Alfred Moffat with notated music in this large format book, encouraging singing as well as reading. The softly colored illustrations of children and their surroundings by Henriette Willoughby-Lemaire were met with critical acclaim when the book was first published and are still enjoyed today.
What makes the lamb love Mary so? The eager children cry. Oh, Mary loves the lamb, you know, the teacher did reply. And you each gentle animal in confidence may bind, and make them follow at your call, if you are always kind.
Did you notice that Mary Had a Little Lamb sounded a little different than what you may have heard before? That's one of the things I love about this collection of music. Next, I'd like to sing you Pat a Cake, but there's a little clapping pattern that goes along with this song, and I'd like you all to help me out, and if you're listening to this at home, I'd like you to try this out too. The pattern is going to go like this. Try that with me.
Pat a cake, baker's man, that I will master as quick as I can. Prick it and nick it and mark it with tea, and there will be plenty for baby and me, for baby and me, for baby and me, and there will be plenty for baby and me.
Thank you. I'd like you to think about the song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Can you hear it in your imagination? The tune that you're probably imagining came from France, but in this book, Mr. Moffat uses a different melody. It came from either Spain or England. We're not quite sure. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle all the night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your little spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky.
Now, I'm going to need a little bit of help on this next song. So I'm going to sing one phrase of music that I want you to learn. When you think you've got it, can you join me in singing?
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice.
Very nice. Now, I would like you to keep singing that while I sing the rest of the song. And I think they'll come together and make a really nice harmony together. Ready?
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever hear such a tale in your life as 3 blind mice?
This next song has some hand motions that goes along with it, so I'm going to try them out, and if you're watching either in the room or at home, I challenge you to try them out as well. This is the mulberry bush.
Here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. Here we go round the mulberry bush on a cold and frosty morning. This is the way we wash our hands, we wash our hands, we wash our hands. This is the way we wash our hands on a cold and frosty morning. This is the way we dry our hands, we dry our hands, we dry our hands. This is the way we dry our hands on a cold and frosty morning. This is the way we clap our hands, we clap our hands, we clap our hands. This is the way we clap our hands on a cold and frosty morning. This is the way we warm our hands, we warm our hands, we warm our hands. This is the way we warm our hands on a cold and frosty morning.
Now for our last song today, I bet many of you already know the tune to Yankee Doodle. I'd like to sing you the refrain, because this one's just a little different.
Yankee Doodle doodle do, Yankee Doodle dandy. All the lassies are so smart and sweet as sugar candy.
I'm going to sing 3 verses, and it would be lovely if you could join me on the refrain. Oops. My page is blowing away. Okay.
Yankee Doodle came to town upon a little pony. He stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle doodle do, Yankee Doodle dandy. All the lassies are so smart and sweet as sugar candy. Marching in and marching out and marching round the town, oh, here there comes a regiment with Captain Thomas Brown, oh. Yankee Doodle doodle do, Yankee Doodle dandy. All the lassies are so smart and sweet as sugar candy. Yankee Doodle is a tune that comes in mighty handy. The enemy all runs away at Yankee Doodle dandy. Yankee Doodle doodle do,
Hello, my name is Kim Knapp Sawyer. I'm the author of biographies of Anne Frank, Harriet Tubman, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Lucretia Mott. Today, I will be reading The Rocket Book by Peter Newell, published in 1912. Peter Newell's innovative and offbeat approach to bookmaking is on full display here. The Rocket Book has a rocket go off in the basement of an apartment building and travel through each floor, leaving chaos in its wake and a hole in the center of each page. The basement. When Fritz, the janitor's bad kid, went snooping in the basement, he found a rocket snugly hid beneath the window casement. He struck a match with one fell swoop. Then on the concrete kneeling, he lit the rock, and it shot up through the ceiling. First flat. The Steiners on the floor above of breakfast were partaking. Crash came the rocket unannounced and set them all a-quaking. It smote a catsup bottle fair, and bang, the thing exploded. And now these people all declare the catsup flask was loaded. Second flat. Before the fire, old Grandpa Hop dozed in his armchair big, when from a trunk the rocket burst and carried off his wig. It passed so near his ancient head, he roused up with a start, and turning to his grandsons said, "You fellows think you're smart." Third flat. Algernon Brackett, somewhat rash, had blown a monster bubble when, there came a blinding flash, precipitating trouble. But Algy turned in mild disgust and called to Mama Brackett, "Say, did you hear that bubble burst? It made an awful racket." Fourth flat. Joe Budd, who'd bought a potted plant, was dousing it with water. He fancied this would make it grow, and Joseph loved to potter. Then through the pot the rocket shot and made the scene look sickly. "Well now," said Joe, "I never thought that plant would shoot so quickly." Fifth flat. Right here, 'tis needful to remark that Dick and little son were playing with a Noah's Ark and having loads of fun. When all at once that rocket, stout, up through the ark came blazing, the animals were tossed about and did some stunts amazing. Sixth flat. A burglar on the next floor up the sideboard was exploring. The family with the brindled pup were still asleep and snoring. Just then, up through the silverware, the rocket thundered flaring. The burglar got a dreadful scare, then out the door went tearing. Seventh flat. Miss Mamie Briggs, with no mean skill, was playing Casey's fling to please her cousin Amos Gill, who liked that sort of thing. When suddenly the rocket, hot, the old piano jumbled, it stopped that ragtime like a shot, then through the ceiling rumbled. Eighth flat. Up through the next floor on its way, that rocket dread went tearing, where Winkle stood in bathrobe gay, a tepid bath preparing. The tub it punctured like a shot and made a mighty splashing. The man was rooted to the spot. Then out the door went dashing. Ninth flat. Bob Brooks was puffing very hard, his football to inflate, while round him stood his faithful guard, and they could hardly wait. Then came the rocket, fierce and bright, and through the football rumbled. "You've got a pair of lungs, all right," his staring playmates grumbled. 10th flat. The family dog, with frenzied mien, was chasing Fluff the Mouser, when poof, the rocket flashed between, and quite astonished Towser. Now, if this dog had wit enough the English tongue to torture, he might have growled such silly stuff as, "Whew, that cat's a scorcher." 11th flat. While Carrie Cook sat with a book, the phonograph played sweetly. Then came the rocket, and it smashed that instrument completely. Fair Carrie promptly turned her head, attracted by the roar. "Dear me, I never heard," she said, "that record played before." 12th flat. DeVere was searching for a match to light a cigarette, but failed to find one with dispatch, which threw him in a pet. Just then, the rocket flared up bright before his face and crackled, supplying him the needed light. "Thanks, awfully," he cackled. 13th flat. Home from the shop came Maud's new hat, a hat of monstrous size. It almost filled the tiny flat before her ravished eyes, when, shoo, up through the box so proud, the rocket flared and spluttered. "I said that hat was all too loud," her peevish husband muttered. 14th flat. Tom's pap had helped him start his train, and all would have been fine had not the rocket-raising cane blocked traffic on the line. It blew the engine into scrap as in a fit of passion. "Who would have thought that toy," said Pap, "would blow up in such fashion?" 15th flat. Orlando Pease, quite at his ease, the Morning Star was reading. "My dear," said he to Mrs. Pease, "here's a report worth heeding." The rocket then in wanton sport flashed through the printed pages. The lady gasped, "A wild report," then swooned by easy stages. 16th flat. Doc Danby was a stupid guy. So, lest he sleep too late, he placed a tattoo clock nearby to waken him at 8. But the rocket smote that clock and smashed its way clean through it. "You have a fine alarm," said Doc, "but say, you overdo it." 17th flat. A penny liner, Abram Stout, was writing a description. The flame shot up, he pounded out, then threw a mild conniption. For through his Flemington there shied a rocket, hot and mystic. "I didn't mean to be," he cried, "so deuced realistic." 18th flat. Gus Gummer long had set his head upon some strange invention. "Be careful, Gus," his good wife said. "It might explode, I mention." Just then, the pesky rocket flared and wrecked that Yankee notion. "I feared as much," his wife declared, then fainted from emotion. 19th flat. While Bert was on his hobby horse and riding it like mad, the rocket on its fiery course upset the startled lad. The frightened pony plunged a lot, like fury playing tag. "Whoa, Spot," said Bert. "Who would have thought you such a fiery nag?" 20th flat. A taxidermist plied his trade upon a walrus's head. It really made him quite afraid to meet its stare so dread, when suddenly the rocket, bright, flared up and then was off. "Oh, Minnie," cried the man in fright, "just hear that walrus cough." Top flat. Oh, it was just a splendid flight, that rocket's wild career, but to an end it came all right, as you shall straightway hear. It plunged into a can of cream that Billy Bunk was freezing, and froze quite stiff, as it would seem, and so subsided, wheezing. Children's Book Week, Read Now, Read Forever, celebrates books that entertain, ones that make us smile or laugh really hard, and some that make us cry. Books that introduce us to characters who become our very best friends. Books that help us imagine the future or remember the past. Many of my own books are about the women and men who stand for social justice and have made a difference in the world. This is a week to celebrate books that inspire. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sasha Dowdy. I work right here in the Library of Congress Young Readers Center. Thank you so much for joining us and hearing authors read the 20 historic children's books now available online in the Historic Children's Selection collection. Thank you for celebrating with us, and I hope you enjoy many more programs to come your way.